In simple words, what is a metaverse?
Well, in the definition itself, yes, there is the word method. This is a kind of virtual space that allows you to combine physical and virtual worlds. That is, this is a classic definition. Because how are the projects developing now? Many projects are called meta-universes, but at the same time they make a virtual world, but it is immersiveness that such a concept exists. Immersiveness, that is, it is a bundle like molecules, that is, physical and virtual space. There is no immersiveness there. That is why, in the classical sense, it is the universe. This is the unification of the physical and virtual world, and by this we can already understand that this means that inside the metaverse you can use services the same as in the physical world, all kinds of models of purchase and sale, training and an infinite variety. That is, there are already working mechanisms. For example, this is the universe, that is, not a person lives, but is kind of virtual entity, which is called an avatar. And let's assume that we are now in some kind of virtual space, visually looking, that is, we are virtual space for them and in this case we are avatars. Avatar that is, does a certain action, this version. It doesn't matter what, that is, it can be completely different. Maybe he draws, runs, walks, looks for something, maybe plays. Absolutely any action. He earns some points and token points for this, in simple terms. And so, within the framework of, say, Bishkek, there are some partners, let's say coffee shops. And, accordingly, if this avatar, or rather his physical essence, that is, I, as a person, am also in Bishkek, that is, I am calm. That is, the avatar approaches a virtual coffee shop, he has some token points on his account on the balance, he buys virtual coffee, but I, as a person, for example, passing by this coffee shop, just go there and show the bartender a conditional code, Kurt, well, it doesn't matter, yes, that is, some kind of label and that's how I get my coffee. That is, the transaction takes place inside the metaverse. And the most interesting thing is that at the same time the person-avatar does not actually spend real money. Why? Because the metaverse is also about the internal economy that is formed within the metaverse.
But for those who create such metaverses, what is their benefit? After all, it turns out they do not receive money and do not pay this money. How is it that without spending real money, we always earn through the meter?
Here, well, I will try to simplify the concept, yes, because there are a lot of stages, yes, that is, it is a whole process. The first thing to start with is tokeno. That is, a token is like conditional money in the metaverse. Let's take utilities in quotes. That is, what are utilities? That is, they are necessary for calculation inside the metaverse, not in the physical world, inside the metaverse. And, accordingly, the token, in order for it to have value, it must have sellers and buyers, as in the market. Well, that is, transactions should be organized. That is, this listing is called. That is, when the metaverse enters the market, a token listing is made and, accordingly, an economy appears behind the listing, that is, there are buyers, there are sellers. That is, if a token has value, that is, it has value and price. When it has a price, and there is an internal economy in the metaverse. What is the domestic economy? This means that, as in our physical world, there are costs, there are incomes, that is, there is work that I do, maybe I am a superheimer, I play games well, I also get some kind of reward for this. In general, in any way there are thousands of options, how to make money in the metaverse. I get this unit, a certain token, as a reward. And this token also has a value, a price. Accordingly, since it has value and price, that is, I can essentially change it for other values that have a price. That is, in this case, coffee. It is formed, you know, here we even need to move away to the concept of a metaverse, we just need to look at our physical world. That is, if I don't do anything valuable for this world, for the physical, then as a rule I don't have a lot of money either, but as it were. And in the meta-universe as well. If I just came there just to make money, but it's unlikely that I will succeed, because if I'm a good artist, I'll make money there, I shoot videos, I write texts, I'm a good 3D designer, I can do, program, code something. That is, there is value for the metaverse. And here is this value, metaverse as a reward, this is such a huge virtual entity that gives money in return, but in fact the currents on the dash are money.
There are also many game metaverses now. Tell us in more detail how the Neftaverse differs.
Game metaverses, in fact, is a story where game mechanics mostly prevail. The gaming market is huge, so, of course, in terms of entrepreneurship, if you have encountered games, of course the guys make game metaverses and they do it well. We have a story just about not only games. That is, we give the user the opportunity if you want to sell goods, and sell. If you want to play, play. If you are engaged in teaching, teach. If you are a university, please come here as a university in virtual halls, virtual classrooms, teaching a student. And so on, and so on. That is, if you are a bank, please. That is, I open a virtual office and sell my financial services through Metaverse. If you are engaged in advertising, please open a virtual office, make a marketing agency sell your services. That is, at the very beginning I spoke about the concept of immersiveness, that is, it is a fusion of virtual and physical space. And this concept is getting stronger and stronger, because if you are a gamer, you come here to a separate location and you play there, you basically choose the games that you like, you also play, but you also get money for it as a bonus. So and so on and so on. Here, if you like to just watch movies, please, you've come in, you only watch movies. Therefore, here is the main difference. That is, we are essentially trying to make a copy of our physical space with the same services, but, so to speak, so that the user receives the maximum amount of benefits within this virtual space.
How did it come from children?
You know, back in the 2017 year, I then had such a project called Kyrgyzstan, that is, they also used oil. And no one practically understood what it was at all. I didn't fully understand either. But there was also some oil, some pictures, some seals, they were mated there, they received children, these children were sold in general in the form of pictures. Well, in general, some kind of nonsense. But when the 2020th year came, that is, a huge peak, a wave of hype, demand for it and oil. And since I have the experience to log in, I began to think about how to use it. That is, the pictures as such are not interesting to me, because it was clear that this is a trend gaining, then it will fall. The artists are good, they will make money on it, but the total mass of 90% will be difficult to earn just on pictures. But what is oil? Oil. You can add almost any value to the inside of oil, that is, a barcode from a real product, service, and so on and so on. And here the story has already appeared just connected with the metaverse, because the metaverse, in the metaverses, the main asset is just the same oil. That is, everything is wrapped up in oil one way or another. They are all of a dynamic nature, that is, they are constantly being filled, supplemented, and they have more and more values. And, accordingly, for my part, a single plan for something in the head of the process began to happen. I began to think about the need to use the knowledge that exists, knowledge about oil, respectively, in terms of these universes, and it all began to coalesce directly into the ideological until at that time in the 2020th year into the ideological layer of the might of the universe. Accordingly, I have made the first plots without a team so far, put them up for OpenSea, they have successfully sold out. That is, I'm like a startup model, let's say, looked at the demand, that is, there is demand. Accordingly, I have already begun to develop a concept around the sites. That is, the concept of just the same oil was born, that is, just the same and then, that is, the first money in team appeared, growth and, as already according to the principle of startup development, yes, we are growing, slowly developing there.
Let's say some company or bank, let's take a bank that wants to become part of Metaverse oil and work there. How does this happen?
A regular user has two segments. The first segment is just a free user, yes, that is, who pays absolutely nothing. He goes there and, in principle, he begins to develop within this space. And depending on how he develops, he begins to have some benefits. There is a second option, that is, when I have a little money, I can buy one or more metaverse assets and immediately, let's say, start not from the first stage or from zero, but immediately from the fifth or seventh. That is, these are plots of land, these are maps. What is it? These are certain passports that give certain privileges within the metaverse, including access to designers, to 3D models, to mechanics, and so on. There are, yes, avatars, where the Tau community is formed on the basis of the Tau of Avatarov. There are more than 10 sources of income within the DAO. This is only within the framework, not counting the income that is still in the meta version itself. And accordingly, the mine ended today, that is, users took their keys from the metaverse for free, which give the user the advantage of being in spaces, receiving bonuses, prizes, distributing tokens, and so on, and so on. A lot of buns. Basically, it's like physically imagining a key that fits almost every door in the meta-universe. There are very few of them there, 4,095 pieces. Literally this morning, in 10 minutes, 4,000 people have become owners of these keys. Businesses also have several options. Firstly, a business as a customer can generally order a separate location in the meta version. That is, there is a metaverse, there is a plot of land, and we, as a metaverse, provide business with a plot with a good location and business develop some exclusive space on it with the help of our programmers. It is clear, some kind of bank, it has such a name, some privileges and functions, and so on. And only this bank will have certain privileges, rules, locations, and so on. And the same goes for other businesses, if it's a cafe chain. The next option. This is when a business simply buys a plot of land itself, maybe they have such an impulse, that is, they do not want to spend additional funds, they bought a plot and simply begin to expand their activities themselves as they see fit. Therefore, these are the options.
The average cost of the plot.
So the cost of the plot. I immediately Matic, this is a blockchain polygon, there is such a currency Matic. I will immediately, that is, I will convert the Matic into dollars and tell you about the approximate cost. Why? Because Matic has volatility, it jumps back and forth and, accordingly, the price changes. At the moment, the cost of a plot of $190, $200 is the minimum and maximum $2,000. That is, this is the correlation. There are 6 types of plots and there they go, it turns out $200, $500, $770 and it turns out up to $2,000.
It turns out that the most expensive is exactly what you said. Where can a business build its location, or is it by volume?
There are several properties there. This is volume, this is divisibility. Divisibility, but I think it will also be interesting what divisibility is. This is when there are 10,000 plots of land in total in the meta version. And our task, as developers of the metaverse, is to make sure that the users themselves do the emission of new sites. We give these plots to users, or rather they do not buy, but indicate the user, depending on the category he bought, he has divisibility, that is, there is volume, that is, the more expensive the plot, the higher the category of the plot, the greater the volume, divisibility and more levels of access to mechanics and designers. If I have a little money, I can take a standard site there for $200, I can start developing something on it, if I liked it, I can just make a small upgrade inside the constructor and, in principle, use the services, or rather access already at the level of the elite, VIP site and so on. We understand that not every user has $1, $2, $3, $5,000 in order to. That is, our task is to make sure that the user starts either with shareware, or with free, or with a small payment at all. Our task is to make it just the same so that Metaverse is accessible to the maximum number of people.
Now you have 10,000 seats, and what will happen when all these 10,000 seats are filled?
Yes, 10,000 plots. Well, that is, places, sites, yes. What will happen? That is, well, a software creak, artificial intelligence, depending on the flow of incoming demand. That is, we understand that the information about the meta version is getting more and more unwound, that is, a new stream of people who would like to start coming. But since these primordial plots are no longer there, that's just the same question with divisibility. Yes, that is, artificial intelligence says, that is, let's say I have a standard section, which is divided into 12 more sections. Here artificial intelligence says, look, now there is a demand on the market, that is, you can now sell 2 shares of your plot there at such and such a price. I choose whether I sell or not. Here, imagine, yes, there is a standard plot divided into 12, there is an elite plot already divided into 24 pieces of land. That is, the higher the category, the greater the divisibility. Accordingly, but based on logic, it turns out that demand is growing, divisibility is also beginning to arise. That is, it turns out that there is no moment when supply outstrips demand, that is, it correlates constantly. Now there are still 10,000, now.